everyone, welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we're going to be creating a calculator program in Scratch that calculates the least common multiple between two numbers. So we actually just covered what the least common multiple or the LCM is and how to find it in our last video. So if you haven't seen that yet, go check it out first. And we also are going to be covering lists, loops, conditionals, functions, and event listeners in today's lesson. So if you haven't learned about any of these concepts yet before, check out our channel because we have tons of resources that cover them. So go ahead and check them out first and then come back here to work on this project with me. So without further ado, let's get into today's project. All right, so as you can see here, I have a blank project open. So far, all I've done is give my project a name, LCM, which stands for Least Common Multiple Calculator. And I'm actually going to go ahead and get rid of the Scratch Cat. We don't need him today. And instead, I'm going to go over here to choose a sprite, and I'm going to choose this button over here. Now I'm going to go to costumes, and I'm just going to put a little label, and this is the button that I want my user to click in order to start this program. So to get the least common multiple. So calculate the LCM. Let's say that. I'm going to have some spaces, center that a bit, resize it so it fits in our button. And I'm going to go ahead and make this white so that we can see it clearly. So there we go. We have our little button. There we go. Looks good. Okay, being a little OCD, but we can continue. So now we have our button. I'm going to go ahead and just place it to the left here. And I'm going to have a little intro statement that just welcomes the user. So let's say that they click on the green flag. I'm going to go ahead and say, welcome to our LCM calculator. Oop, and it looks like I can't type. Welcome. And for 2 seconds, and then I'm going to actually grab this block and say, click me to begin. And so the reason why I chose this second say block without the 2 seconds is because essentially this is going to stay on the screen until the user does something else. So this first message is going to flash for 2 seconds, and then the second message is going to keep staying up on the screen until the user actually clicks on this button. All right, so before we move too far into the actual program, let's create a function that will do this calculation for us. So let's go over here to my blocks, and we're going to make a block. And I'm going to say, calculate the least common multiple between, and here I'm going to put an input. So we're going to have this calculator work for two numbers. So I'm going to say num1, add a label just to say and then num2. So pretty much what this block is going, the way, once we create our function, we'll be able to just grab this block over here and put in our two numbers. And ideally, if we code our function correctly, it will be able to calculate the least common multiple between these two numbers. So we can go ahead and hit OK. And notice that we now have this block up here, which is going to be our function. And when we're ready to start, we can call this block over here. So I'll leave this to the side for now. And let's get started on our function. It's going to do a little rearranging, leave this down here. Okay, so if you are coming from our least common multiples video, this program is going to be an implementation of the first method of solving our LCM, finding the LCM of two numbers. So if you remember, what we did is for each number, let's say we started with the number 3. We first calculated and found all of the first couple multiples of 3. So let's say we do the first 5, and we say 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Okay, and then we found the first couple multiples of the next number. So let's say 5. 5. So we did 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. I apologize for my poor handwriting. I am using my mouse tracker today. So after calculating the first couple multiples of each numbers, then we went through the list and kind of found the first the lowest multiple that both numbers have in common. So if you go through, 5 does not have 3, 5 does not have, sorry, let me start that again. If we're looking at the multiples of 3, right? 5 does not also have a multiple of 3. It does not have a multiple of 6. It doesn't have a multiple of 9. It doesn't have a multiple of 12, but it does have a multiple of 15. So we went through this first list of factors, or sorry, multiples, and kept comparing to see if each of these multiples were inside of our list of multiples for our second number. And this could work in either direction, right? So if we went backwards and we started with 5 instead, you would look here and say, okay, 5 is not one of 3's multiples, 10 is not one of 3 multiples, but 15 is one of 3 multiples. So we can go ahead and select 15 as our least common multiple. So that is how we're going to be programming our calculator today. And just so you know, we mentioned it before in a couple of our other videos, there's usually not one way of going about doing things. If you come up with a different strategy to figure out the least common multiple for 2 numbers, please let me know and plug your project in the comments. We'd love to see what you come up with. Today, we're just going to go with the strategy I've come up with. So the very first thing we want to do is we want to create 2 lists of the first, let's say, 10 multiples of the 2 numbers that we have. So how can we do that? So first, I'm going to come over down to variables. And if you notice at the bottom of variables, they have this button that says make a list. So I'm going to come over here. Oops, let me get rid of my annotation. I'm going to come over here and say multiples of num1. And I'm going to create another list called multiples of num2. Okay, so here we have 2 empty lists right now. And what we want to do is we want to add all the multiples of num1 to the num1's list. And same thing for num2. So how can we do this? So let's use our number 3 that we mentioned before as an example. So we want to find the first 10 multiples, right? How do we do that? So like we just did before, we can do 3 times 1 to find the first one, 3 times 2 to find the next one, 3 times 3, etc. So we're pretty much multiplying 3 by the numbers 1 and then increasing that number over and over again. So how can we do that? Well, we can use a combination of a variable and a loop to do this. So let's see what I mean. So let's first start off by creating a variable called multiplier. So we're going to say multiplier. And this is going to be our like times 1, times 2, times 3. So at the very beginning, we're going to set multiplier to 1. And now we want to multiply our multiplier to num1. So we're going to say num1, which we're going to grab from this block over here, times our multiplier. So we can go here, or sorry, to operators, get this time block. We're going to say num1 times our multiplier. Okay. And for now, let's just go ahead and say this to see what we get. So if I click on this, notice that we get 0. That was weird. What's num1? Oh, we don't have num1 yet. So let's go ahead and actually grab this and let's use the same example that we had. So we did 3 and 5 before. So num1 should be 3. So if I click on this, notice that we get 3. And so now, again, we wanted to do this 10 times and multiply 3 times 1, 3 times 2, 3 times 3, all the way up until we get to 3 times 10. So what can we do for this? We can use a loop. So I'm going to go ahead and get this repeat block and say repeat 10. So let's see what happens when I try running this. So we get 3. And it looks like we keep on getting 3. Let's just make sure by actually adding this number to our list. So how can we do this? We can go down here to variables, scroll down a little bit, and we get the blocks that have to do with list. And we can come here and say add thing to the list that we want. So we want to add this number to our multiples of 1. So let's go ahead and remove this and put this here. And let's try again. Okay, that doesn't do anything yet. So we're just going to click on this block. And notice that 10 times, it added the number 3. So we didn't want the number 3 repeated 10 times, right? We wanted the next multiple of 3 to show up. So what did we forget to do? We forget to increase our multiplier variable by 1. So we're going to say change, after we add the first number to our list, we're going to change multiplier by 1. So multiplier is now going to be 2, and now we're going to add num1, which is 3, times 2, which is 6, to our list. So let's try this now. And notice that if I scroll a little bit, we now can see 3, 6, 9, 12 down below. So notice that it kept adding to our list. So we actually want this to restart every time, or like clear the list every time we start the program again. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click delete all of multiples of num1. So everything from our multiples of num1 list, we're going to delete right when we click on the green flag. So I'll go ahead and click it here. Now I'll click on this, and now we see the multiples of 1. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for our multiples of num2. So here I'm going to go ahead and add a add block. Then I'm going to come here, get our multiplication block, and say num2 multiplied by our multiplier. So now if I click on the green flag to clear, and then click on here, oh, let's see. What do you notice happen? I did not change my second one to add it to nums2. So the multiples of 5 are coming down below. So we're going to say this instead. And let's try that again. Clear. Welcome. Click me to begin. We'll take care of that in a second. And then now you can see our multiples of 3 in this list and our multiples of 5 in this list. All right, so we have our first 10 multiples of these numbers. What's next? We want to go through one of these lists and compare and see if any of these numbers on this list exists in our second list. And again, it doesn't matter which way you go. So whichever way I do, you can do the opposite, or you can do the same way that I do it. So let's see how we can do this. So again, we want to go through each number of this list. How can we do that? We can do that by using another repeat block. So let's go ahead and go to our control, and we want to repeat as many times as there are numbers on the list, or until we find a common multiple, right? So for now, how about we just repeat however many numbers are on our list? And since we are adding numbers to both lists in this repeat block, both lists should have the same number. So it doesn't matter which one you do here. So I'm going to say repeat, and I'll do this down here. And I'm going to say repeat the length of our list. So let's find the block for that. Length of multiples of num1. So that essentially, if there are 10 things on our list, it's going to go through this 10 times. But we do have the option to make it stop as soon as we find the number. So we'll get to that in a moment. So now we need some way of getting through our list and checking to see if it's in the other, if each number is in the other list. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go through our list and just say the number just to make sure that we're actually going through. So how can we do that? I'm going to actually go ahead and create another variable, and this is going to be how about we call it a tracker variable. It's going to track where we are on the list. I'm going to set the tracker to 1. So right before we come inside, I'm going to set tracker to 1. Why am I doing this? It's because the very first item of our list, as we can see here, is in the position number 1. So I'm going to check to see if the item stored in position number 1 is in the list. If not, then I'm going to increase that tracker to 2, check to see if number 2 is on the list, and move on from there. So I set tracker to 1. And I'm going to repeat this 10 times. And for now, I'm just going to say the number or whatever item is stored in position 1. How can I do that? I can say, and I'm going to go down here, sorry, to variables, not my blocks. And I'm going to say item 1 of multiples of 1. So let's try that and see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead, clear list. And then click on here. So notice that it's going through and it's saying each of our numbers. Except actually, is it saying each of our numbers? No, it's only saying the number 3. Why is that? That's because this is saying, say, item 1, when really we want to say item of tracker. And what will happen if I do this? It will still keep saying item of number 1 because tracker is set to number 1. So before moving on, I'm going to go ahead and update tracker by 1. So let's try now. I'm going to click green flag to clear. And notice that our num2 is not clearing because we forgot to delete all of multiples of num2. Okay, so let's see where we're at now. So let's go ahead and clear it. Now both of our lists are cleared. And I'm going to say calculate. Notice it's saying 3, saying 6 now. It's saying 3, 6, 9, and saying 3, 6, 9, 12. Okay, so why is it saying it each time? It's because before we even add the next number to our list, we are checking to see if the numbers that we have so far are in the list. So each time this program is checking after every number to see if that new number is in the list. So it seems to be working. So it seems to be getting the actual each element of our num1. So now instead of saying item tracker of multiple num1, we're going to check to see if this item is in our second list. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this, keep the change below, and all of the code that was in here, we're going to put right before this change. So I'm going to go to our controls and I'm going to say if then else. So I'm going to put this up here and this should still come at the end. And I want to say if this item tracker, item 1, item 2 is in our second list, then stop the program and report the number. So I'm going to come over here to my list, I believe. Let's see. And I'm going to look for something that checks to see if something's inside of something else. Okay. So this block over here. So this block pretty much has a contain. So what this says is that this list multiple of num1 contains something else. So we're actually going to be checking to see if this list num2 has the items of num1. So I'm going to go ahead and put item of num1 here. And now I can put all of this inside the statement. And what do I want to do? I want to say whatever is in this, whatever is the number that is in both lists. So I can go ahead and say item tracker. So let me go to variables, tracker of multiple 1. And then let's go ahead and try that first and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to click on our block over here. And notice what happens. It found a common number. So it's saying 15, but the program continues to run until it gets through all 10 items. Because again, here we said repeat 10 times. So even though it found our number 15, it kept going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the program to stop at this point. So I'm going to come up here to control, I believe. And I'm going to say stop all. Okay, so what do we want to happen if this does not find the number inside? This is when we actually want to change our tracker. So I'm going to go ahead and actually move this change up here. So essentially, if the number that we just added is also in the nums2 list, then we're going to stop the program. Otherwise, we're going to continue our tracker to keep repeating this list. So let's go ahead and try this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click here. And notice now how quickly the program went through, and it kept going until a number in list num1 is inside of our num2. So really quickly, why did we want to keep checking the entire list to see if it's in num2? Because again, depending on what numbers you give, you might come to the common number in one list before you get to it in the next list. So for example, if we started by going through all the numbers of num2, 15 won't be in list number 1 by the third round of multiples. So we have to keep checking everything in the list for each multiple until we do find something in common. So once we get to number 5 of num2, that's when we finally find the 15 of num1. All right, another thing to notice that I just actually caught for myself is that we change our multiplier before we do all of the work of checking to see if the number that we are adding to our list is a possible least common multiple. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to move our change multiplier so it comes after we do all of the checking, just so that it doesn't mess up with the work that is happening here. And you'll notice that if I try running this again and click on this, we still get, oops, one more time, we still get 15. All right. Okay, so now let's kind of flesh out this program just so that it looks a little bit nicer. So what we're going to do, again, I have this little welcome message that says, click me to begin. So rather than having the user, go inside the code and click here, I'm going to come over here to events, and I'm going to take this block when it says when this sprite is click, calculate the least common multiple between these two numbers. So now if I click here, the list empty, click me to begin, I click, and it automatically does it. So right now, our program is only able to do the least common multiple between 3 and 5, but we want this to work for any number that the user gives. So what we can do before we even get to the calculating of these two numbers is how about we ask the user for the two numbers that they would like to use. So let's go ahead here, and I'll go say, enter your first number. And I'm going to store this number. So I'm going to say set. Let's see. I'll create a new variable called num1. And I'm going to say set num1 to answer. So going back to our sensing to answer. And then I'm going to do this again. So I'll just go ahead and duplicate this. Oopsies. And then I'll say, enter your second number. And now I'm going to create another variable called num2. We're going to set num2 to answer. So now we have two variables, num1 and num2, that the user is going to input. And now we can call this function on the two numbers that the user put in. So we're going to say calculate the LCM between num1 and num2. All right, so let's try it. We don't really need to see these three things, so I'm going to go ahead and hide them from, or four things, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and hide them from being seen. You can do that just by checking these boxes over here. And now let's go ahead and try it. It successfully clears our list. Click me to begin. Enter in your first number. Let's say 3, 5. Oh, I said 4 by accident. And 12, which is correct. If you look at our list, 3, 6, 9, 12, 4, 8, 12. 12 is indeed our least common multiple. We'll put this a little higher. Let's put this over here so you can see it a little bit better. There we go. Let's try another one. Let's try 4 and, oops, let's try that again. Click me to begin. 4 and 6. That's also 12. Let's try the big number that we came up with in our last project. So click here, which was 72 and 18. And look at that, it got 72. So I'm going to take this one step further, and instead of just saying the number, I want to give my user an entire message that kind of tells them the least common multiple between num1 and num2 is this. So how can we say that? We can do that by using a ton of join blocks. So what does the join block do? The join block allows us to combine strings, aka like a combination of letters, words together to make to combine into a longer string. Woo, words. Okay, so how can we do that? So I'm going to go to operators, and here we have the join block. So for example, I can say the least common multiple between, and I want to say num1 and num2 is blank, right? But the join block only has one other placeholder. So I couldn't, if I said num1, for example, nothing would happen. If I click on this, it just says the LCM between num1, which is not what we want, right? We actually want to say num1, which is this one. So if I click on it, between 72, and I want there to be a space between 72, but how can we say the rest of our sentence? Well, we can grab some more join blocks, and we can put this inside of the first one and continue it. So num1 and, right, and I want to say more, so I'll grab another join block. Num1 between num1 and num2, rather. And another one is one more. And then we can say, how about we say, item counter, right? Right, because that's what we said in here. Perfect. So this one. So now I can put all of this inside the hello block, and let's see how it works. Click me to begin. First number, see 3, 4. Okay, almost. There's some spaces missing, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure there's spaces around our actual words, because the computer doesn't know that we don't want them to be together. Imagine if you wanted to say something apostrophe S, right? You don't actually want the computer to automatically put a space in when you have an apostrophe S. So the computer assumes that you don't need it, and you can do the work of putting it in yourself. So is, and okay, so that should be good. Let's take a look. And let's try 4 and 5. There we go. 4 and 5 is 20. Now, what will happen if I try to put in a really small number and a really big number? So for example, what happens if I do 5 and then 105? Notice that I did not get any number. We got all the way to the end, and the computer was not able to figure out what the least common multiple of 5 and 105 is. That is because we limited the number of multiples to check for to 10 by using this repeat 10 block. So we can actually replace this repeat 10 block with a forever loop so that this keeps going on until the program finally finds a least common multiple. So if I go ahead and put here, now one thing to know about forever blocks is that you need something that will eventually end it. The dangers of having a forever block is that it will quite literally run forever unless you give it some rule to stop. So what is our rule in our project? It's this stop block over here. We say that once we finally find a common multiple, even if it's not the least common, or it's gonna always be the least common because we're always starting from lowest to highest. But as soon as it finds a common multiple between the two lists, it's going to automatically stop. So this program will eventually stop when it finds the least common multiple. So if I go ahead and try this again, clears the list, calculate, and I put 5 and 105, you'll see that eventually it finds that the least common multiple is 105. And you'll see here that this took 21 tries to figure that out, because 105 is, 5 is a factor of 105. 105 is a multiple of 5. So we needed to keep multiplying 5 by integers 21 times until we got to 105. So there we go. That is our least common multiple calculator. All right, so that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed working on this program with me. If you came up with another solution for figuring out the least common multiple, please let me know in the comments below. I'm sure some of you can come up with better solutions than the one that I came up with. If you have any questions, concerns, or ideas for future projects to work on, please let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I will see ya. Bye.